If you followed this from Western media, you'll hear a lot about how Israel is violating international law on a bunch of different issues, whether it's humanitarian aid, civilian casualties, and the blockade. But we should clarify what international law is. The way people talk about international law is kind of similar to the way people will talk about actual laws of countries. You have a law, you violate it, there's a punishment is written into the law. This is not what international law is. International law is not really a thing. It's some combination of different treaties, conventions, agreements that contradict each other, contradict the laws of the countries that are signed to them. They're not really enforceable, even with attempts to enforce them. They're in many cases not applicable, like the idea that you can't harm civilians in war. To the extent that anything can be deciphered from it and interpreted, international law should be taken as something that is very, very vague. When it comes to warfare, there are rules restricting what people can do, and the people who play by those rules are always the good guys, to make it simple. They're always the relatively free countries that are victims of savages like Hamas, a terrorist organization. In a war, you're allowed to bomb a military base. Hamas has no military bases. They have a de facto military, but they have no bases. They hide in tunnels, they hide among civilian populations. They play into the fact that international law, to the extent that you can pretend that it's a thing, is something that defends them. And they're using our morality against us. They're also using our imaginary laws against us. And we are attempting to adhere to those laws and paying a heavy price for that. One of the leaders of Hamas, he was killed in a bomb that took down the whole building, and this was said to be a violation of international law. Israel said they didn't know that there were so many children there. Does that count as targeting civilians? It's difficult to know with international law what that is. If you ask me if that was the correct action, absolutely. The fact that he is a terrorist already tells you what kind of a person he is. The reason Hamas hides among the civilian population is because they know the West will use both the moral arguments of altruism and the idea of international law. How do you wage a war against an enemy that hides among civilians in a way that does not harm the civilian population on the one hand, but that eliminates the enemy on the other hand? How is that war going to be waged? What makes up international law, the agreements, the conventions, they are not fully applicable in any case. International law is not law. It's semi-fiction.